When I try and initially, when I started trying to describe what my project was, right, I would say this is the fastest rollable power. And I've been saying it for the last few months. People didn't really get it. I'd be talking about elites. People would be like, whatever is that? And then I would be trying to abbreviate things as much as I could. And it's an effect that I learned. And then again, Chuck, who's become a friend of mine and he's an academic on Twitter, and then John Robb, who have studied this really, whereas Chuck has studied it within a more academic environment, and it's really been a huge part of his life. And then John Robb, who has been observing this over the last few years from his own military familiarity with military behavioral sciences and tactics within guerrilla warfare and the way memetics work. So, again, I used to try and describe it to people, and I would talk about, I hate to call things fake news, but inconsistencies and just kind of the episodic nature. And I found that it was very difficult for people to grasp what I was saying. And they wanted everything put on, basically compressed down to maybe 10 words. That's all their minds could really fathom of holding on to a concept, this intangible type of thing, was, just for the fewest amount of words possible. So initially I described it as if somebody asked me what France is like, and what they really want is just a postcard of the Eiffel Tower with no background, just a postcard of the Eiffel Tower. And from that, their minds can kind of complete the picture, because that's really what happens. It doesn't make a difference if their minds, I'll give them a picture of the Eiffel Tower, and their minds will do all the rest of the work. All I have to do is give them a picture of the Eiffel Tower. There's something wrong with the way people's minds been wired, that they can't take the complete information and file it away properly. They have to turn something into what I really call a postcard. So it's become so difficult for me to explain to people what's going on that I kind of gave up. And instead, I'm just recording everything and just writing everything down. And it's probably about 50 different categories right now. So it's not just about COVID. It's not just about the HCQ debates and about doctors. In fact, I would say a lot of it is no longer about COVID. COVID is just is one big part of it, right? Because COVID is this effect that I described as dark city, right? When you're locked in, you'll forget what it was like before, which is one of the big problems within our democratic system, a Western system for the last several hundred years, is we all have a good sense of freedom, and particularly within America. So you've got to, in order to corrupt that and to take that away, you've got to lock people up. You've got to make them forget what freedom once was. These are not old concepts. I mean, this goes back thousands of years. Nothing what I'm saying is new. It's just the way that they've implemented it, the forcefulness, the violence in which they've implemented it, and they've put all these measures out there is just shocking. So, we see the riots. I've called these rioters kind of a phalanx for the megacorps, because clearly the megacorps are a part of what's going on. Clearly, they're very happy with displacing political structures with their own, let's call it corporate structures. So I'm trying to record that as much as possible, and I'll give you an instance of that. Right? Is we saw Antifa at DC, right, in Georgetown. I guess they were there like a week ago or something, and it's just very interesting because we're seeing the DC elites now being displaced by the Amazon elites. We're seeing them being displaced by the Facebook, Amazon corporate elites who are pushing them out. And they've been able, so, we'll discuss, but that's part of it also, is how violently and how quickly and coercively we've seen kind of change in structural changes within both what we would call our democracy, our republic, into something that it's transformed into something that's not that, right? The words we have to describe our political structures no longer work. We can't say that a congressperson is available to people anymore. They're not. We can't say a senator is, right? Because they're not. You can't call up your senator and say, let's have a cup of coffee. I want to discuss this with you, right? But if you have a complaint, and you can't say I've got a complaint about my water bill, I want to call up my senator or my congressperson and hash this out with them. They'll be unresponsive to you most likely, right? But you can do that with Google. With Google, your user experience is very good, right? They're quick, they're responsive. If the customer service is really good. So Google and Amazon are have much more frequency touching you than your politicians do, right? You're interacting more frequently with the megacorps now, and they're much more responsive to their electorate, so to speak, than the politicians are. So also within this fastest roll-up of power, we're seeing this transformation of a political system into something different. And I'm also trying to record that. So there's a lot of things I'm trying. There's like 40, I'm going to say there's probably like 50 chapters that were segments. Right now they're just segments that I'm really, really diligently and very meticulously kind of cataloging and then writing little narratives and then contributing to them as they grow or as they kind of get a little bit easier to kind of flesh out, and they crystallize a little bit more. So it's really, Black Lives Matter is certainly a part of that. The protests were certainly a part of that. Watching the way New York acted as an accelerant for COVID, for coronavirus in January, February, March is certainly a part of that. The same is true with Germany, looking at key events, but then looking at constitutional changes outside of the United States and in Europe, at emergency powers that have been invoked, financial reconfigurations, which have been incredible, and people aren't going to like what happens as far as that goes. So kind of interesting stuff. So whatever questions, I hope that answers something.